Everyone got a fun video today, so we're going to talk about how to forecast supply and demand for your talent based on setting a revenue goal. This is, I think, really good for early, mid-stage companies where you're trying to build out your team. Maybe you've got expected growth coming in the year ahead, and you're trying to think through how do you actually meet the demand by building the right team around it. So it's kind of building on some of the other work that we've done, and there's definitely going to be some follow-on videos that you might want to watch after screening this. But the core concept is really thinking about how your organization is really built almost like a supply chain where you have inventory or kind of people that are in the roles. You have flow time, so how quickly it takes to get someone onboarded and ramped up, and the flow rate, which is how much revenue you're actually generating by each individual as they're kind of sitting in the seat and actually bringing in new business to the organization. And so we're going to use that as the baseline for how we think about the whole talent team. And there's a few kind of concepts I'm just going to cover first, and we'll jump straight into it. So first is introduce something called Little's Law. This is something from business school, really simple but so powerful when you start to think about your organization as kind of overall headcount and thinking about the inflows and outflows of different people. And what you can use that for is thinking of how many people you actually need in the organization, how long it's going to take them to get to productive, and how much revenue they produce. Because if you're producing a overall headcount plan from the revenue backwards, you really have to think through all these things. And we're going to cover a very high-level overview of how that works today, but there's probably going to be a lot more follow-up work that you might want to do in the future. The kind of main concepts we're also going to consider is thinking not about how do you actually meet the goals, but how do you overstaff. And there's kind of many different reasons there. We won't go into too much depth in this one because I want to make it more tactical. But really, you think about building the team and how you might want to define different roles. Maybe you've got different kind of levels of customization that each of your sales reps is going to have. And so that's maybe how you think about kind of building the broader team. And your go-to-market motion. We're going to keep it really simple today, but I just wanted to flag these things so that they're in the back of your mind. So as you're watching the process, you can actually think, well, how does this apply to my organization? And what are the kind of some of the assumptions that I'm going to change? And how am I going to build this out to be potentially more complicated and not kind of explainable in 10 minutes. So there's a couple of follow-on videos that might be helpful. If you build the plan, you actually need to figure out how do you actually deliver against that plan. The recruit capacity model has been one of the most popular videos on our channel, so I'd recommend having a look through that, look through the templates that are included there. The structured recruiting process is, I think, my gold standard for how do you actually build a recruiting process to ensure that you're getting the best people through. And kind of linked to that is thinking about quality of hire. If you're hiring a lot of people, but they're turning quickly or they're not delivering against expectations, then you're actually not going to meet those revenue goals. So I think those three things really kind of go hand in hand, like building the team that is actually going to deliver the hires for you, building a hiring process that's actually going to make sense, and then measuring and improving the quality of the people that you're hiring. So with that being said, let's jump straight into how we're going to think about the kind of headcount that we're going to need. So here's a sheet that you can kind of copy. What I would say is that I get a lot of requests for editing these sheets. So just click File, make a copy, and you'll be able to create your own version of this, which you can edit to your heart's content. Quick overview, the green cells are all calculated fields. The purple cell is probably one of the most important fields. I try and just keep to one per page. And then the kind of yellow, orangey cells are the ones that you can edit, and would recommend that you kind of customize these to your organization. You can see all the formulas I use. I've tried to keep it very, very simple. But what you can do here is adjust your annual revenue target. It'll give you your total customers and actually build out the team. The team is built based on these assumptions here. So we have the quota for your account executives, average contract value at ACV, and then based on how many AEs you have, how many customers you have, how much revenue you have, you can actually build out the rest of the go-to-market team here. And so that's how you think about what kind of total team size do I need. And you can change these assumptions here, and that's actually going to change the baseline here. So let's say I'm only growing to 5 million in revenue. You can see that the revenue size then comes down to just 35. But let's say that the AE quota is actually 200,000 because it's actually much harder to get big ticket sales here. And so now you see that actually our revenue size goes back up to 56. And so as you kind of play around with this, you'll figure out what is the right team size. What I would recommend is use the assumptions, figure out what the recommendation is, and then see if that actually makes sense. Does it make sense that you'd have 6 sales engineers to deliver a $5 million revenue target? And a good way to do that is think through what you have right now, and is that delivering against the goal? Maybe you're starting from scratch and you just have $1 million revenue target. You're trying to figure out what is the team size that you're going to need to deliver against that. You can see it's just a 10-person team, 20 customers, but the AE quota is pretty low here. So maybe we push the AE quota up to 500,000, then you only need 6 people. And for a lot of like early stage companies that I've worked with, a 6-person go-to-market team is, it's quite sustainable, and it's built for growth. So 2 AEs, an SDR, a sales engineer, an account manager, and then someone working on demand gen. Actually, see, it sounds quite reasonable. So really play around with a lot of this. I'm going to go back to the original assumption I had, which was a $10 million revenue target. These are all kind of just baked in, just rough assumptions. But the kind of key down here is to actually figure out what do you currently have, and that's going to give you your gap. So based on the planning assumption we have here, we need 66 people in the overall go-to-market team to support $10 million in annual recurring revenue. And right now we have 30 people. So this is actually probably a good example of a company that's scaling year over year and trying to double their revenue. And they already have a team built out. Maybe it's not the most kind of efficient team, or people have moved around, they've seen attrition, so that number could be lower. But this is what we're going to use for a planning assumption. Now, once we have that baked in and we say, okay, this makes sense, we can stand behind this based on the assumptions that we've made, we can then start to look at the hiring timeline and think through how we're actually going to build the team that we need and deliver against the targets. Now, a quick caveat is this is a very simple hiring approach, in that we're not really including ramp time in this, just because I'm trying to keep the models very simple. We're also not thinking about time to hire, which is a huge concern as well. So if we're looking at forecasting start for October, right now it's, when I'm filming this video, it's August, so that's 2 months away. You should probably already be hiring to fill these positions if you're in the United States. If you're in Europe or other parts of the world where hiring takes longer, maybe you're already behind schedule. But you can start your forecast. Maybe you actually want to start your forecast for the 1st of 2026. So that's actually going to adjust all these here. You can see the formulas that I put in. It's just a 5-quarter forecast because I found that that's actually as far forward as you can kind of reasonably predict. What you can see here is we have the planned hiring schedule and the cumulative headcount down here. Now, I put these numbers in just to show you what it might look like if you were thinking about ramping a team to get to your 66 number. But if we take all of these numbers out, you can see we've pulled that 66 across from our other tab, and we have that 36 headcount gap. But what this enables you to do then is figure out by quarter how many people am I going to hire. And if you've watched any of the other videos on the hiring process and how to think about a hiring plan, you know that you actually want to kind of schedule these out over the course of a whole year and not just try and hire everyone in one quarter. One, you're not going to have the recruiting capacity to do that anyway unless you hire a lot of external recruiters. But two, it actually makes more sense for onboarding and ramping, so you kind of have more of a steady kind of inflow into the organization. So for AEs, maybe you want to hire 2 per quarter. And then when you get to the end of Q1, once those final 2 have been ramped, that's when you're going to start to hit your revenue targets. So just bear in mind, this is forward-looking, and you're not going to hit the revenue targets until everyone's in place. And so that's going to be one of the assumptions you want to bake in. For SDRs, we need to hire 3, and maybe you have an urgent need, or we want to hire 1 every other quarter just to support the team as you ramp up the AEs. Sales engineers is 4, so maybe again it's kind of, we don't really need any right now, but Q2, 3, 4, 1. And you can see as we're starting to kind of add all these in, the gap's going down. So it's a very manual process. There's definitely ways to automate this. But I find what this gives you is a way to look at how many hires you're going to make in total per quarter and think about whether that's sustainable, is that reasonable? And you can then hand this hiring plan over to your recruiting team, and they can hopefully go and execute and deliver against those goals because you've got a reasonable expectation. Better yet, bring the recruiting leader into this conversation, have them sit down with you and get to know what's reasonable. So they understand this is the output that you want, but they're going to think about the input, which is, when do I need to start recruiting for these roles? Knowing that a sales manager may take 6 months to fill, whereas an SDR, maybe they already have a pipeline built out. So that's the overall walkthrough. Very straightforward. You have cumulative headcount down at the bottom here, so it just shows you how the organization is going to grow over time. I'd say 4 things to think about before you actually finalize this plan. One is, as I discussed, ramp time is going to be important. And so you think, when does that revenue need to land, and how long is it going to take to ramp up? So maybe you actually want to front load a lot of the account executive roles and then maybe backload customer success. Wouldn't recommend that, because then you're going to onboard people and they're not necessarily going to be set up. But really think through, how does this kind of overall plan work for you? How many leads you're going to have in process at one time? So if you have a large top of funnel and you're really filtering people through, maybe you need more SDRs to actually act as that first filter before they move across to account executives. And think about seasonal demand. If you have a seasonal product where maybe the bulk of the orders are coming in Q4 or maybe Q2, how do you staff up to meet that demand in that quarter? Maybe like natural attrition, reduce headcount size while you're backfilling those roles. And then each year you're at peak capacity, ready for the busiest quarter, and then you kind of slack capacity for the rest of the year. And then finally, attrition. That attrition is going to come. Generally, we see this happen in post-bonus season, but there's certainly times of year when attrition is going to be higher than normal. So think about those 4 things as you start to bake that in. I'd say next steps for this, if you want to take it further, this is building your go-to-market motion, because we're doing a revenue-first headcount plan. Maybe then want to start to think about, okay, well, how do the other parts of the organization fit to this based on the revenue and the sales and the customers? What do I need from an R&D perspective, from an operations perspective? What does that HR team look like? What about the finance team? Do I need things like competitive intelligence? So there's kind of all these other parts of the business that you're going to have to think about. I'd say an easy way to do that is to use these same kind of assumptions and just think through, what is the ratio of those roles to different parts of the organization. So HR is an easy one. Maybe you need 1 HR rep for every 50 people in the organization. And when you start to bake those in, you'll see that your role organization size starts to grow, and you can start to play around with the numbers, play around with your assumptions, and then figure out what makes the most sense. The next stage beyond that is to start adding compensation into it and actually see, do these numbers make sense from a profit and loss perspective? Are you actually going to hit your profit goals if you follow this plan? So that was it. Go back to the first page. These are the 3 videos I recommend watching next if you're interested in going a little further. If you want me to cover this in more detail, please drop a comment below. I'd be happy to dive a little deeper into this. But I hope you found this helpful. Please like and subscribe. It's so helpful for the channel and helps me continue making videos. Thanks very much. Take care.